Well, good evening. It looks like we are really being blessed with a lot of spiritual food. And I was thinking a while ago, it's only one more day, but then I changed my mind. As I said, still one more day. But we're going to miss it. Going to miss all this good spiritual food. Well, I'd like to invite you to have prayer with me. Gracious Father in heaven, again we have the privilege to go through your word and to learn some things, and we ask you to guide and lead us. Open our hearts and minds. We want you to teach us, guide us and lead us, and draw us closer to you. Thank you for loving us and hearing us in the name of Yeshua. Amen. The Bible says in Isaiah 1:18, "Come, let us reason together." Shouldn't we do that more and more? Amen. We need to discuss things, study things, and reason together. In 1 Thessalonians 5:21, it says, "Prove all things." How many? All. Okay. In 1 John 4:1, it states to try the spirits, because there are many spirits gone out in the world, and there are many false spirits. In Acts 17, we are challenged to be Bereans and to search scriptures preserved and handed down by the church in the wilderness to see if these things were so. So just don't believe anything you hear, don't believe anything you see, especially as far as religion goes. And like Shauna said, see everything through Torah glasses or Torah eyes. So today, this presentation is about the law of Moses. The law of Moses, could that be a misnomer? A misapplied or misappropriated name? Could that name, the law of Moses, lead to misunderstanding and to confusion? Actually, there is much confusion rampant today regarding the law of Moses. For that reason, our modern churches have made the law of Moses into a terrible misnomer, in particular by claiming that it has been nailed to the cross. The entire first 5 books of our Bible constitute the law of Moses. The Torah in Hebrew and the Pentateuch in Greek are the first 5 books of the Bible. It is these first 5 books of the Bible, including the 10 Commandments, statutes and judgments, and the ordinances of the altar, which were written in a book, more likely on a scroll, and placed in the side of the Ark of the Covenant. How do we know? Well, the Bible tells us in Deuteronomy 31:26, "Take this book of the law, the Torah, number 8451, and put it in the side of the Ark of the Covenant of Yahweh, your Elohim." We can assume that the mentioned book was in the form of a scroll, not in a book format that we have today with rectangular pages and with a hard cover. However, there's another interesting part of the sentence in Deuteronomy 31:26, which says, "Put it in the side of the ark." Well, what does that term mean? Put it in the side of the ark. The Bible does not tell us that there was a pocket or another container or another piece of furniture in the most holy place. There's no mention made that there was something made to hang the scroll on or to put the scroll in. Another point to consider is that the leaders of Israel were to use the written instruction to make day-to-day decisions according, and also they were to read out of the book every 7th year to the entire congregation. Maybe they had more than one copy stored somewhere else. We do not know, but we think so. Because if there's only one copy kept in the Holy of Holies, it would have been accessible only on the Day of Atonement, but not the rest of the year. And the high priest would have to get it out and put it back on the same day. And only on that one day of the year, which is very unlikely. The book or the scroll would have either been put inside, next to the Ark of the Covenant, or on the floor. It couldn't have been inside the Ark, as all the other translations that I've checked are very clear on that point. So let's read just a few of them. It says in the NIV, beside the Ark of the Covenant of Yahweh your Elohim. In ESV, by the side of the Ark of the Covenant. In God's Word, it says, put it next to the Ark of the Promise of Yahweh your Elohim. In the Darby's Bible translation, put it at the side of the Ark of the Covenant of Jehovah your Elohim. Then we have Webster, put it in the side of the Ark of the Covenant of Yahweh Elohim. Then the Young's Literal Translation, and thou hast set it on the side of the Ark of the Covenant of Jehovah your Elohim. And I think I have one more, put it by the Ark of the Lord's agreement. Now, in order to put the book on the side of the Ark, in the side of the Ark, by the Ark, or next to the Ark, according to the Bible translators, there had to be some place to put it on, even though it is not mentioned specifically what this place would be, except it was next to the Ark. Now, according to Ron Wyatt, a Seventh-day Adventist archaeologist, he claimed that there was a pocket, a drawer on the back of the Ark of the Covenant where the scroll of the Torah was kept. If it's true or not, I do not know, but it makes sense, because I don't think they were putting it on the floor. That would have been not very respectful. Wherever this book of the law was put, one thing is sure, it is no less the law of Yahweh. The distinction many churches and denominations make of this other law that Moses wrote down are purely arbitrary and in no way supported by the Bible. Christianity, including Seventh-day Adventists, cleverly divide the law into two parts. What is it? Moral and ceremonial. Now, we have an example here by Amazing Facts. And they call one law, the book, Moses' law, and the other one, the tables of stone, they call God's law. The question, is that right? Is that correct? Did Yahweh author one law and Moses authored another law? That's what it sounds like. That description is very misleading, yet millions believe it. The assumption is being made that Moses wrote the law on paper in a book and placed it in the side of the ark. They call what Moses wrote down the Mosaic or ceremonial law that was done away with or nailed to the cross. So Seventh-day Adventist reasoning claims, since I am one, that since the moral law cannot be nailed to the cross, because it was written on stone by the Creator himself, pretty hard to do that, right? Put a nail through the tables of stone. It is therefore the ceremonial law, everything written in the book by Moses, that was nailed to the cross, thus saving the seventh-day Sabbath, which is part of the Ten Commandments, from being done away with. Pretty clever. But does it make sense? So here's the imagery. Moral law written in stone, it is permanent and everlasting. That's the reasoning. On the other hand, we have the so-called ceremonial law written on paper and is only temporary. First, let's make one point clear. Neither the word moral law nor the word ceremonial law is found in the whole Bible. There's no place in the Bible where the two colossal divisions of law are displayed. These terms, ceremonial and moral, were invented by man. The Bible defines the law as being divided into commandments, statutes, and judgments, but in no case moral or ceremonial. Now, one source claims that the great counter-reformer of Protestantism, Thomas Aquinas, from the Catholic Church invented the idea that there was a ceremonial law. He said that the Sabbath commandment was moral as to resting one day a week, but was ceremonial as regards to time. Therefore, it has been transferred to Sunday in the New Covenant since Jesus rose on the first day of the week, he says. He was countering the Anabaptists and Melanchthon that were Sabbatarians, and you can find that on this website there. Since the word ceremonial law is not in the Bible, it would be less misleading and less confusing if we purge this word from our vocabulary. Don't use it, because if we use it, we are actually adding to the word of Yahweh. It's not there. This term, ceremonial, is only confusing and not biblical. What we should be talking about are the ordinances of the altar, a term that is used in Ezekiel 43:18. And that makes more sense. It's not confusing. The Bible talks about a sacrificial system, the animal sacrifices and the oblations, the grain and the wine offerings. So let's talk about the law of Moses. What do people mean by that term? They usually don't mean the 2 tables of stone, but they mean the book of the law. So we know that the 2 tables of stone were written with the finger of Elohim, with the finger of God, and there seems to be no confusion with some Christians. But what about the book of the law, written by Moses, that causes so much confusion? The book of the law was physically written by Moses, but it was dictated by Yahweh himself. Is that important to know? So in reality, it is not the law of Moses, but the law of Yahweh that was dictated to Moses so he could write it down. Now, do we know why Moses wrote the book? Do we know the reason? I'm sure you all know that here. After Yahweh spoke the 10 commandments, the people were afraid. And they said in verse 19 to Moses, "Speak thou with us, and we will hear, but let not Elohim speak with us, lest we die." So it sounds very clearly that Yahweh intended to speak not only the words of the 10 commandments to the people, but also all of the words of the statutes and the judgments. The people, however, would not allow Yahweh to continue, and they begged Moses to go up into the mountain, and this is being shown all in Deuteronomy 5:23 to 27. So let's look at it. It says, "And it came to pass, when ye heard the voice out of the midst of the darkness, for the mountain did burn with fire, that ye came near unto me, even all the heads of your tribes and your elders. And ye said, Behold, Yahweh our Elohim has showed us his glory and his greatness, and we have heard his voice out of the midst of the fire. We have seen this day that Elohim doth talk with men, and he liveth. Now therefore, why should we die? For this great fire will consume us. If we hear the voice of Yahweh our Elohim any more, then we shall die. For who is there of all flesh that has heard the voice of the living Elohim speaking out of the midst of the fire, as we have, and lived?" So can we see what happened? They were afraid to listen any longer to the voice of Yahweh. They were concerned about their life because they didn't want to die, but they felt like dying. So then we have verse 27, when the people ask Moses, "Go thou near and hear all that Yahweh our Elohim shall say, and speak thou unto us all that Yahweh our Elohim shall speak unto thee, and we will hear it and do it." So according to verse 21, Exodus 20, Moses drew near unto the thick darkness where Elohim was, and Yahweh spoke to Moses and gave him all the statutes so he can pass them on to the people, and then he wrote them in a book. And these statutes are listed in Exodus 21, 22, and 23, and the covenant was ratified in chapter 24. And just something to think about for some people that don't know, the yearly appointed feasts are listed in verses 18, 21 to 23 of chapter 23, and they belong to that covenant prior to the worship of the golden calf. So Yahweh wrote the 10 Commandments with his own finger on 2 tables of stone, and Moses wrote the rest of the law dictated by Yahweh in a book. So both the 10 words written on tables of stone and the book written down by Moses originated with the Creator. Can it be any clearer? So why is there so much confusion? It doesn't make sense to say that the 10 Commandments, because they were written with the finger of God and placed inside the Ark of the Covenant, that this proves they should have a greater significance than the statutes and judgments. So we have the 10 Commandments and the scroll. So these things that were written in the book were dictated by Yahweh and placed at the side of the ark. The statutes and judgments were just as important as the 10 Commandments, as these were given explicitly to explain the 10 Commandments in detail, and they are binding upon men in every age as long as time should last, no matter what anybody says. Yahweh is the author of both, period. Amen. Both have the same weight. The 10 words of the law are the headings. The statutes and judgment explain them in detail. It's just that simple. So why the confusion? Remember, there's a statement here in Sermon on Talks in page 187. It says, "It was Jesus Christ, Yeshua HaMashiach himself, who gave special instructions or directions to Israel. He gave many other statutes or judgments which were to be strictly obeyed. These are recorded," it says here, "in the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd chapter of Exodus." Can't get any plainer. The Ark of the Covenant could not be touched, or one would die. So let's look at it again. When the 10 Commandments were written on the stone tablets, they were then placed inside the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark, which was wood overlaid with gold with 2 cherubims on top. Inside were the tablets, the manna, and Aaron's rod. And these could not be seen. They were inside the Ark. No one was allowed to touch the Ark under penalty of death. And we see that in 2 Samuel 6:7 and in 1 Chronicles 13:10. The 10 Commandments had to be also written in a book, I believe, since no one was allowed to access what was inside the Ark. This is where the book of Deuteronomy, the book of the law, comes into practice later on, and it makes sense that the 10 Commandments were also copied by Moses into the book. Otherwise, they could not read them to the people, because they couldn't get inside the Ark to read them. So they had to be recorded someplace else. No one was allowed to pull the 2 tables out of the Ark in order to share the commandments with the people. Not even the high priest when he went in. The Israelites would have had no access to the word of Yah if there had not been a complete copy of all the laws outside the Ark. All 613 laws were the instructions, including the 10 Commandments. While the original were inside the Ark, it only makes sense that they were also written down with the other outside the Ark for the priest to have access to their instruction. Yah told Moses to write all of his words down and put them in a book, because these words were a covenant between the Creator and Israel. These words of Yah included the Ten Commandments and all the laws, commandments, statutes, and ordinances given in the Torah. So all of his words, whatever division is used, were to be given as commandments to Israel as a covenant between him and Israel. It was all one unit that they were to obey. They were all together in the Holy of Holies, which is a type, a shadow of Yeshua, who was a temple not made with hands, fulfilling all the law, except the animal sacrifices, as he was the ultimate lamb. In Nehemiah chapter 8, verses 1 and 2, we read, "And all the people gathered themselves together as one man into the street that was before the water gate, and they spake unto Ezra, the scribe, to bring of the law of Moses, the book of the law of Moses, which Yahweh had commanded to Israel." So what did he bring out? The book of the law of Moses. Do you believe that it also may have contained the Ten Commandments? Nehemiah 8:2. "And Ezra the priest brought the law before the congregation, both of men and women, and all that could hear with understanding, upon the first day of the 7th month." So what day was that? Day of trumpet. Again, we can assume with safety that the Ten Commandments were recorded in the book of the law, in the law of Moses, so they could be read before the people. Remember, the tables of stone were inside the ark. They were unavailable. The Bible said that they kept the Feast of Tabernacles. The Levites made a confession of Elohim's goodness and of the national sins, and in chapter 10 of Nehemiah, in verse 29, they committed themselves by saying, "We do hereby join with our leaders in an oath, under penalty of a curse if we break it, that we will live according to Yahweh's Torah, which Elohim gave to his servant Moses, that we will obey all that Yahweh our Lord commands us, and that we will keep all his laws and requirements." To call this book of the law of Moses, is really a misnomer. As Seventh-day Adventists, we have a statement in Review and Herald 5/6/1875, which states that Moses himself framed no law. Moses was not the author, he was just a servant. He was a mouthpiece, he was the deliverer. Christ gave to Moses statutes and requirements necessary to a living religion and to govern the people of Elohim. And then it says in that statement, Christians commit a terrible mistake in calling this law severe and arbitrary, and then contrasting it with the gospel admission of Christ in his ministry on earth, as though he were in opposition to the just precepts which they call the law of Moses. Actually, we should make one correction to that statement of Ellen White, because Moses made a better said, he changed one law. Did you know that? Now that's according to Yeshua in Matthew 19. In his answer about divorce and marriage, he said in verse 8, "Moses, because of the hardness of your hearts, suffered you to put away your wives, but from the beginning it was not so." So Moses did make one change according to Yeshua himself, right? He allowed them to divorce. But it was because of the hardness of their hearts. But before we go back to the so-called law of Moses, let's look at the Ten Commandments. Most people do not know this, but the facts are that the phrase the Ten Commandments was coined in the Middle Ages and is a mistranslation. The Hebrew text called them in translation the words of the covenant, the 10 words. And you find it in Exodus 34:28, or just 10 words in Deuteronomy 4:13 and 10:4. So the 10 words of the covenant stand as a summary words for the rest of the words of the covenant. And here we want to read these texts in Exodus 34:28. And he wrote upon the tables the words of the covenant, the 10 words. Deuteronomy 4:13, and he declared unto you his covenant, which he commanded you to perform, even the 10 words. And he wrote them upon 2 tables of stone. Deuteronomy 10:4, and he wrote on the tables, according to the first writing, the 10 words which Yahweh spoke unto you in the mount out of the midst of fire in the day of the assembly, and Yahweh gave them unto me. Now, earlier translations such as Wycliffe in 1395 and Coverdale in 1535 did not have that changed wording. It was introduced in the Geneva Bible in 1560, and the Bishop's Bible in 1568 then copied that changed words, meaning from the 10 words to the 10 commandments. So let's repeat it again. The 10 words were not a separate law. Most people put a dividing line between the two, one being permanent and the other one temporary, ending at the cross. The 10 commandments are the summary of the law. The book of the law listed the 10 commandments also and contained the fine print to explain the 10 commandments in detail. So the dividing line is man-made and it must go. Both the 10 commandments and the book are one and the same, one unit, and they're both binding. We call the tables, we call that the tables of the covenant. In Exodus 34:27-28, and Yahweh said unto Moses, write thou these words, for after the tenor of these words I have made a covenant with thee, with Israel. And he was there with Yahweh 40 days and 40 nights. And he wrote upon the tables the words of the covenant, the 10 commandments. So that's called the tables of the covenant. Now, Exodus 24:7, it says, and he took the book of the covenant and read it in the audience of the people, and they said, all that Yahweh has said, we will do and be obedient. And then in 2 Kings 23:2, it states, and the king went up into the house of Yahweh, and all the men of Judah and all the inhabitants of Jerusalem with him, and the priests and the prophets, and all the people, both small and great, and he read in their ears all the words of the book of the covenant, which was found in the house of Yahweh. So we have the tables of the covenant and a book of the covenant, according to the Bible. Isaiah 30:8 clearly reveals the ancient covenant custom that what was written upon the tables of the covenant was also written in the book of the covenant. Here it is. It says there, now go, write it before them in a table, and note it in a book. Do you see the two? Table and the book, that it may be for the time to come forever and ever. That's Isaiah 30:8. So we see here that the words of the covenant, whether written in summary on stone or written in detail in a book, are written down in two places, upon tables and in a book. Coming back to the ancient covenant customs, let's look now at Nehemiah chapter 9:13 and 14. It says, thou camest down also upon Mount Sinai, and spakest with them from heaven, and gavest them right judgments, and true laws, good statutes, and commandments. Verse 14, and madest known unto them thy holy Sabbath, and commandest them precepts, statutes, and laws by the hand of Moses, thy servant. So can we notice that what was spoken by Messiah from Mount Sinai and what was written by the hand of Moses corresponds? It is the same thing. We cannot separate the table of the covenant from the book of the covenant, because the author of both is Yahweh, period. One was spoken by Yahweh and the other one was dictated by him. The Jews divided the law or the Torah into three main divisions: in commandments, in statutes, and in judgments. And here are a few Bible verses which supports this idea. The first one is in Deuteronomy 5:31. But as for thee, stand thou here by me, and I will speak unto thee all the commandments. It's the same Hebrew word, and the statutes, and the judgments, which thou shalt teach them, that they may do them in the land which I give them to possess it. So it talks about commandments, statutes, and judgments. In Deuteronomy 6:1, now these are the commandments, the statutes, and the judgments, which Yahweh Elohim commanded to teach you, that ye may do them in the land whither ye go to possess it. We have another one in Deuteronomy 7:11. Thou shalt therefore keep the commandments, and the statutes, and the judgments, which I command thee this day to do them. I have one more here. Deuteronomy 11:1. You see the same principle? Therefore thou shalt love Yahweh the Elohim, and keep his charge, and his statutes, his judgments, and his commandments always. According to Nehemiah 9:13-14, the same divisions of the word of the covenant, meaning commandments, statutes, and judgments, which was spoken by Yahweh on Mount Sinai, and written with his own finger upon tables of stone, and called the tables of the covenant, and the same division of the words of the covenant were also given in detail to Moses to write it in a book, which was called the Book of the Covenant. The tables of the covenant were placed inside the ark, and the book of the covenant was placed in the side of the ark. But both were placed in the most holy place. The Jews also divided the Ten Commandments into these three categories: in commandments, statutes, and judgment. I didn't know that before. First, the Ten Commandments are divided by the first 5 commandments that have the sacred name Yahweh, and the second 5 that do not have the sacred name. Now, what does Christianity do? They divided the Ten Commandments into the first 4 as pertaining to God, and the last 6 as pertaining to man. Not the same. The Jewish understanding is that the sacred name is in the first 5 commandments reveal that they pertain to man's duty to Elohim. This includes the 5th commandment that requires that we honor our father and mother. This is because Yahweh ordained it that our father and mother stand in the place of Yahweh to their children. This is also brought out in a statement in Signs of the Times of May 7, 1894, and it says the family institution is a divine ordinance. Parents stand in the place of God to their children. Isn't that interesting? The last 5 commandments pertain to man's duty to man. This division is supported in the New Testament by Paul's statement in Romans 13:9. He says, "For this thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness, thou shalt not covet, and if there be any other commandment, it is briefly comprehended in this saying, namely, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself." Now note that Paul does not include the 5th commandment here. He teaches that it is the last 5 commandments that are comprehended by the words, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. That was new to me personally, because I was taught something else. But it makes sense. Because I always wondered why the first tablet had only 4 and the second one 5. Even the fourth commandment is pretty long. But if it was just 10 words, it should be the same space. So the first and second commandments are understood by the Jews to be commandments, a statement of fact. The third, fourth, and fifth commandments are understood by the Jews to be statutes. And the last 5 commandments are understood to be judgments. They describe how to treat one another. So thus we have the 10 commandments divided exactly in the same manner. Even though the 10 commandments, the statutes and judgments are Yahweh's laws, but Yahweh himself still calls them the law of Moses. Like in Malachi 4:4, we are very familiar with that text. Remember ye the Torah of Moses, my servant which I commanded unto him. Of course, here it kind of explains it. I commanded it to him. For all Israel in Horeb, with the statutes and judgment. Even though the law, the Torah, is called the law of Moses, it is for most the law of the Creator. Because Moses was the mouthpiece of Yahweh, he was only a servant. Who commanded Moses to write the Torah, according to Malachi 4:4? It was Yahweh. He says, I commanded him. The Bible says in Exodus 33:11, part 1, and Yahweh spake unto Moses face to face, as a man speaketh unto his friend. Do you know the phrase Yahweh spake unto Moses saying occurs 74 times in Scripture? In Numbers chapter 12, Miriam and Aaron murmured against Moses, and they said, hath Yahweh indeed spoken only by Moses? Hath he not spoken also by us? And Yahweh heard it. Miriam and Aaron by the murmurings were guilty of disloyalty, not only to the appointed leader, but to Elohim himself. And how did he rebuke them in verses 7 and 8? He says, my servant Moses, who is faithful in all mine house, with him will I speak mouth to mouth. Wherefore then were ye not afraid to speak against my servant Moses? You know, by speaking against Moses, Miriam and Aaron were actually speaking or murmuring against the Creator. Remember, Moses was only the instrument. Question. If Yahweh really meant it when he told Moses that he wanted people to believe thee forever, and if Yahweh was angry with Miriam for speaking against Moses, how is it then that Christians today think nothing of speaking against Moses and against Moses' law? So what happened here? Computers are strange. Oh, we're back. There's more too. So is there a lesson for us today? Should we be careful how we treat the law of Moses? Which is in reality the law of Yahweh? No other prophet can make such a boast as Moses. He had the highest level of inspiration, and his experience was unparalleled by any other writer in the history of mankind. That's why Messiah made it clear that he did not come to get rid or do away with the teachings of Moses, according to Matthew 5:17-19. The law of Moses is a law of Yeshua. I am saying this respectfully now, that even Ellen White, as an example, is to be interpreted and understood in subjection to the authority of Moses and not the other way around. Whenever there's an apparent disagreement or discrepancy between Ellen White and the law of Moses, Moses does have the upper hand. Some people may have a problem with that, but that's their problem. Every prophet that came after Moses must be interpreted and understood in subjection to the authority of the Torah. And if we know that, and if we follow that, we have no problems. Our problem is if we put somebody else's translator above it. Now, Ellen White even agrees with that, and I'm glad. Here are her words. She says, lay Sister White to one side. Do not quote my works again, as long as you live, until you can obey the Bible. When you make the Bible your food, your meat, and your drink, when you make its principles the elements of your character, you will know better how to receive counsel from God. I exalt the precious word before you today. Do not repeat what I have said, saying, Sister White said this, and Sister White said that. Find out what the Lord, God of Israel, says, and then do what he commands. So I think that's a really good statement, and most of us don't do it, and I didn't do it in the past either. Now that's excellent advice. It was written in 1901. The Bible states in Deuteronomy 34:10, and there arose not a prophet since in Israel, like unto Moses, whom Yahweh knew face to face. So let's ask the question, does Moses matter anymore? Is he still important? Do we still need to heed what he has written down? Absolutely. Even in 2011. Especially in 2011. I like that. Now, what does Messiah say about Moses in Matthew 23, 1-3? The scribes and Pharisees sit in Moses' seat, he said. All therefore whatsoever Moses says, that observe and do, but do not observe the takanat and the marasim of the Pharisees. For they say they follow Moses, but they do not do what Moses says to do. So this was translated from the original Hebrew, since Matthew was the only gospel written in Hebrew. In the parable of the rich man and Lazarus, Abraham told the rich man in Luke 16:31, if they hear not Moses and the prophets, neither will they be persuaded, though one rose from the dead. Isn't that clear? Before his ascension, Messiah told his disciples in Luke 24:44, all things must be fulfilled which were written in the law of Moses and in the prophets and in the Psalms concerning me. What did Philip have to say about Moses? Find that in John 1:45. Philip findeth Nathanael and saith unto him, we have found him of whom Moses in the Torah and the prophets did write, Yeshua of Nazareth, the son of Joseph. So what did Stephen have to say about Moses? This is he, Moses, that was in the church in the wilderness, with the angel which spake to him in the Mount Sinai, and with our fathers, who received the lively oracles to give unto us, to whom our fathers would not obey, but thrust him from them, and in their hearts turned back again to Egypt. What about Paul? Did he have anything to say about Moses? Acts 28:23. And when they had appointed him a day, there came many to him into his lodging, to whom he expounded and testified the kingdom of Elohim, persuading them concerning Yeshua, both out of the Torah of Moses and out of the prophets, from morning till evening. Let's look what James had to say. For Moses of old time has in every city them that preach him, being read in the synagogues every Sabbath day. We had that the other day, Acts 15, verse 21. But most important, what did Yahweh himself say out loud from Mount Sinai about Moses? Exodus 19:9, and Yahweh said unto Moses, Lo, I come unto thee in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with thee, and believe thee for how long? Forever. That includes us. We are not excluded. Believe Moses forever. How does Yahweh himself describe Moses in Scripture? My servant Moses occurs 3 times in Scripture. Moses, my servant, 3 times. His servant Moses, 2 times. Moses, the servant of Yahweh, 16 times. Moses, the servant of Elohim, 5 times. Moses, the man of Elohim, 6 times. Just to give an idea. As Yahweh commanded Moses occurs 40 times in Scripture. All that Yahweh commanded Moses occurs 9 times. As Yahweh had commanded occurs 7 times. As Yahweh commanded occurs 55 times in the King James Version. So let's remember, Moses himself authored none of what he wrote down. Whether it was recorded by the hand of Moses in a book or written by the finger of Elohim on tables of stone, it all came from the mouth of Yahweh. I know it sounds repetition what I'm saying here, but we need to understand that, and we need to get it in our brain. Whoever's going to watch the DVD needs to get the message, because it's very important. Does Moses have any end-time significance? All we have to do is look to Malachi 4, 4, and 6, right? And I know we have seen it before, but let's just read it again, so we will not forget. Remember ye the law, the Torah of Moses, my servant, which are commanded unto him in Horeb for all Israel, with his statutes and judgments. And it says right afterwards, Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of Yahweh. And he shall turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the heart of the children to their fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with a curse. Pretty important. So what does it refer to here? That refers to our spiritual forefathers, like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So actually, isn't the Bible very plain that the last generation is to remember the Torah, given by Yahweh, written down by Moses? And for what purpose? That we should keep it. So why is there so much resistance and even confusion within Christianity in reference to the law of Moses? Can we say an enemy has done this? The arch-enemy knows the importance of Torah, that the Torah is the foundation of heaven's government. So what is his strategy? And he has various strategies to deceive and to confuse people. One way Satan tries to confuse people is to have people make flesh their arm. Instead of studying the scriptures themselves, let someone else do it. The Bible says in Jeremiah 17:5 and verse 7, Thus saith Yahweh, Cursed be the man that trusteth in man, and maketh flesh his arm, and whose heart departeth from Yahweh. But blessed is the man that trusteth in Yahweh, and whose hope Yahweh is. So in the book Great Controversy 595, it says Satan is constantly endeavoring to attract attention to men in the place of God. He leads the people to look to bishops, to pastors, to professors of theologies as their guides, instead of searching the scriptures to learn their duty for themselves. It's a lot easier to let somebody else do it. Then by controlling the minds of these leaders, he can influence the multitudes according to his will. So the eye should not be constantly be looking to men, studying the plans which men devise, but rather seeking for a knowledge of the plans which are determined by the source of all wisdom. So what are some of the false teaching today? The law of Moses ended at the cross. It goes even further. They say if you obey Moses' teaching, then you are rejecting the Messiah and his plan of salvation, because the Pharisees obeyed the law of Moses, they claim, and were his bitterest enemies. You know, Satan is the instigator of such teachings. He wants to label those who want to obey Yahweh to look like criminals and enemies of Elohim, and he has turned everything around. There's an interesting statement in the book Prophets and Kings, page 179. It says, a signpost was erected by Elohim for those journeying through this world. One arm of the signpost pointed out willing obedience to the Creator as the road to felicity and life, while the other arm indicated disobedience as a path to misery and death. The way to happiness was as clearly defined and was the way to the city of refuge under the Jewish dispensation. But in an evil hour, for our race, the great enemy of all good turned the signpost around, and multitudes have mistaken the way. So Satan is behind all this, behind all the confusion and deception. There's an interesting quote also written in Review and Herald 5/6/1875, which says, Christians who extol Christ, but array themselves against the law governing the Jewish church, array Christ against Christ. So why does she say that? Because Christ, the Messiah, was the originator of the Jewish economy. He was the one that spoke the Ten Commandments from Mount Sinai. He was the one that instructed Moses what to write down in the book of the law. So when men array themselves against the so-called law of Moses, they array themselves not against the man Moses, but against the Creator. Because Yeshua was the foundation of the Jewish economy. When we love Elohim, we will joyfully obey all his commandments, statutes, and judgments. Deuteronomy 30:16 states, I command thee this day to love Yahweh thy Elohim, to walk in his ways and to keep his commandments and his statutes and his judgments, that thou mayest live and multiply, and Yahweh thy Elohim shall bless thee in the land whither thou goest to possess it. This is repeated many times over in the Bible. Here's the one in 1 Kings 2 and 3. You can write it down. I don't want to read it because of time. And then we have another one, on the other hand. We have the curses in Leviticus 26:15-16, which says, and if ye shall despise my statutes, or if your soul abhor my judgment, so that you will not do all my commandments, but that you break my covenant, I also will this do unto you. I will even appoint over you terror, consumption, and the burning ache, that shall consume the eyes, and cause sorrow of heart, and ye shall sow your seed in vain, for your enemies shall eat it. That was in Leviticus 26:15 and 16. So the instructions given to Moses were recorded for the benefit of all who should live upon the earth to the close of time. Yahweh said unto Moses, how long refuse ye to keep my commandments and my laws? Exodus 16:28. Mankind has a sinful tendency to rationalize evil into good. The children of Israel, especially the mixed multitude, were continually disposed to rebel, and by their works provoked Yahweh to destroy them. It happened over and over again. In Exodus 32:9, the Lord said unto Moses, I have seen this people, and behold, they are what? Stiff-necked. I'm glad we're not stiff-necked today. But the same message about the rebellious people was given to Hosea 8:12. Even though I gave them all my laws, my Torah, they act as if those laws don't apply to them. Another translation, I've written many things for them in my teachings, but they consider these things strange and foreign. And then King James Version, I have written to him the great things of my law, but they were counted as a strange thing. The same was true in the New Testament. Stephen said to the priests and leaders of that day, after they had accused him of blasphemy, he said in Acts 7:51, ye stiff-necked and uncircumcised in heart and ears, You do always resist the Holy Ghost, just the same as your fathers did. Has man changed? I don't think so, because Satan is still active. So when people are throwing out the law of Moses, the first five books of the Bible, by nailing them to the cross, what are they actually doing? They're throwing also the Ten Commandments directly or indirectly out. And also, in addition, they throw all these statutes out. For instance, payment of tithe and offering, eating the fat of an animal, eating the blood of an animal, looking at nudity and pornography, committing acts of rape. All these things are thrown out the window. Committing acts of incest, committing acts of fornication, committing acts of homosexuality, committing acts of bestiality, not paying a timely and fair wage, being selfish to the poor, snubbing or making fun of the handicapped, snubbing or making fun of the elderly, rejecting strangers, gossiping, bearing grudges, and keeping even and getting even, cutting designs into your beard or hair, cutting scars or tattoos into your skin, selling your daughter into prostitution, attempting to contact the dead, unscrupulous business dealings, ignoring the Sabbath, ignoring the Passover, ignoring the Feast of Unleavened Bread, ignoring the Feast of Weeks, ignoring the Feast of Trumpets, ignoring the Day of Atonement, ignoring the Feast of Tabernacles, killing animals for sport, and many more. Now that's all the things they're throwing out. So we must ask the question, why is Christianity as a whole trying to desperately nailing the law of Moses, the book of the Torah, to the cross? When you really think about it, even the laws of the sacrifices and oblations were not abolished. They were merely substituted from type to antitype and from symbol to reality. Under the new renewed covenant, sacrifices are still required, only now they're living sacrifices. As surely as fire descended upon the animal sacrifices, so at Pentecost, tongues of fire descended upon the 120 living sacrifices. The lifting up of the hands in prayer are equated to the evening sacrifice. Hebrews 13:16 refers to doing good and communicating truth, gospel, are sacrifices with which Yah is well pleased. One can get the distinct impression for wanting to throw out the law of Moses is for only one purpose, mainly trying to get rid of the seventh-day Sabbath and the yearly appointed feast days. That's the main reason. We can understand that from Satan's point of view, to get rid of Yahweh's feast days, as they are a prophecy of the plan of salvation. Because Yahweh's feasts cannot be merely substituted like the animal sacrifices or temple services, because they do much more than merely point to his sacrifice. They are a trifold prophecy spanning the entire plan of salvation and will not be entirely fulfilled until Satan and his angels are no more and the earth is made new. The Bible says, "Open thou mine eyes that I may behold wondrous things out of thy law." Psalm 119:18. Is that your desire? If that is our prayer, Yahweh will open our eyes to discover and see those beautiful things. The law of Moses is a beautiful thing when man regards it rightly. This is why the psalmist says, "Oh, how I love thy Torah. It is my meditation all the days." Remember, the Torah was not meant to save men, to cleanse them from their past failings, but to show them their need to be saved, and thus lead them to the Messiah. But after the Messiah has cleansed them from all their past sins, he points them back to the Torah in order to be and to stay sanctified. Keeping the law of Moses, the Torah, is an expression of love. Is the law of Moses a "thus saith Moses" or a "thus saith Yahweh"? Therefore, to do away with the law of Moses is an attempt to do away with the law or the Torah of Yahweh. To ignore and to do away with the law of Moses is breaking the covenant between Yahweh and his people. And let's ask the question, what does a covenant-keeping God have in common with a covenant-breaking people? Yahweh said in Exodus 19:5 and 6, "If ye will obey my voice indeed and keep my covenant, then ye shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine, and ye shall be unto me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation." I pray that each one of us will be willing to keep the covenant between us and our Savior by obedience to the law of Moses with the statutes and judgments. I pray that Yeshua, the bridegroom, will dwell within you by his Spirit. The Savior will teach you how to love his law, his Torah, the marriage covenant, and when he comes to take the church, his bride, home, you will go in to the marriage and to the feast. Let's have prayer together. Gracious Father, I want to thank you so much that the Bible is so clear about the law of Moses, the Ten Commandments, the statutes, the judgments, and help that we have it clear in our minds and hearts, and that we give this message to other people, help them to understand that they will walk in your footsteps and keep your covenant because they love you. Thank you for hearing us in the name of Yeshua.